Alright guys, I am back home and we are gonna take a little bit of a peek on what I would consider the top 3 builds. I'm gonna give my top 3 and then I'm gonna give you 3 honorable mentions, I would call it. For my number 1 pick of this league is gonna be the Hero fan Ice Nova Frostbolts. It's my main build. This build has become my favorite build that I've played in any ARPG. It just feels so well rounded. It has basically everything you want. It has damage, it has tankiness. It's not the absolute fastest build there is out there by any means, but it's fairly easy to build out and it's very comfortable to run through the campaign, through the maps, getting into the end game and doing your Ubers and your pinnacles and all that kind of stuff. It's just extremely well rounded in every part of the game when it comes to mechanics and atlases and stuff like that. I have not found something that it's super weak at. It's just phenomenally well balanced. I feel like it's one of the better builds I've played. It's somewhat simple. You're just stacking as much mana, life, ES, and spell damage as you possibly can. Gear is not the worst to come by. A couple of pieces can be a slight bit of expensive. Mage Blood is of course not a necessary thing to have at all. It's just this is complete overkill. At the point where you have Mage Blood, it's over. There is nothing in the game that's a challenge anymore. But for the most part of the gear, you can basically recomp almost everything. The only things I would say you would have to kind of purchase is probably going to be the Serious Foilable and maybe the Kitava's Thirst if you want to go that direction. Yeah, that's about what I want to say about this build because it's just so fucking good that there's really not a lot that I can put on it. I'll of course leave a link to the build in the description for you guys to check out. I'm gonna leave a couple of options. I'm gonna leave the PoE Ninja for my build, and then I'm gonna leave a POB for a build guide for it, so that's easy to follow. And then I'm gonna include a link to the video where I talk a little bit more about this build. So if you're interested, that would be the way to go. I highly suggest doing this build. I am definitely gonna go this route, just because of how fast and how easy it'll be for me to get to the very end game. But yeah, that is gonna be my number 1 pick. Let's get to number 2. Alright, so here we are on what I would consider the second best build, which is gonna be the Lightning Strike, Molten Strike of the Zenith CI Trickster, which is basically what Ben and a couple of the other competitors played in the Gauntlet. And this build I've just finished almost. I'm still kind of missing the crafted belt in order to put on my ring, and putting on the ring then allows me to put on my tincture instead of the Dying Sun. So once the build is done, I can basically put the belt on, the ring on, and the flask on, and the build is complete. But it's still extremely good at this point. I haven't yet put out a video on it, which I am currently working on, but I will include a POB for this and a little bit of a description on how I would go about leveling and going through the campaign and whatnot. I would start rolling magma into power siphon into LS, and then having the Molten Strike of the Zenith as your backup for doing your bosses and pinnacles and Ubers and stuff like that. Overall, this is a very simple build. It's basically built around the Ethereal Edge, having just stacked as much energy shield as you can, since you are receiving 20% of your energy shield as lightning damage by using this sword. So we are basically just pushing for as much ES as we can on all of our gear, and there's a couple of pieces here that are of course going to be slightly on the expensive side. So for instance, the voices is probably going to be fairly expensive. A tincture like this is going to be stupid expensive. That's 100% guaranteed. You could definitely do with less than what I have here, but if you're going for the full like super build, you are definitely gonna want to push for as much ES as possible. And this, what makes this ring really useful is with this ring we are allowed to throw 4 curses, or like 2 curses and a mark. So I have elemental weakness, and I have conductivity, and I have punishment in my helmet, which I will be swapping the all attributes for triggering the skill gems when focused. I'm thinking I'll go with that instead, so I only have to press one button to get all 3 effects active at the same time. And I was thinking about doing an assassin's mark in here, but I'm not 100% sure if I want to go for that or if I'm going to go in a different direction. But that being said, it's a phenomenal build, and I'll of course leave some links in the description to help you guys out with building this specific build. So let's take a look at what I would call number 3. So here we are on what I would consider the number 3 build to go for if you're just looking for something simple, true, tried and true, really not too much headache in terms of gear or like how to build it out. It's fairly simple. This is the Righteous Fire RF, the Chieftain build, which is very nice for mapping. I really like this. It's extremely tanky. It does real good damage, and due to the ascendancy, we have a specific ascendancy point which allows us to explode enemies, dealing 500% of their maximum life as fire damage. Basically, this is gonna appear on every big pile of enemies, so they'll basically blow up into oblivion with this specific skill point. Yeah, and a very simple build, very cheap build too, in all honesty. Of course, you don't have to have maze blood, that's just overkill, but a couple of things that you kind of do want to go for. Legacy of Fury is very nice. I do like the brass dome armor for the maximum resist, and another thing that is really nice is the Kikasuri ring is super nice, especially when the higher level you are, the more life you regen with this. Aurora is kind of nice too, super lovely, and then you're just basically stacking some fire damage, strength and life regen. Fairly simple. You're just stacking fire res. That's all you're really looking for here. The more fire res, the better. So the fire res is basically gonna overcap everything else. As you can see, I have 268 fire res, which in turn took all my regular, or like all my other reses up by a mile. So cold and lightning is 90, and chaos is 75 once we are inside of a map, I believe. But yeah, super simple build, extremely well performing, and it just looks phenomenal. Plus it's basically a no button build, right? You only want to move around like this. You're not really attacking. Once you meet a boss, maybe you're throwing some fire traps, maybe you're doing something else. You have kind of a couple of choices when it comes to like a secondary attack. You could go with Scorching Ray, you could go with Detonate Dead. There is a couple of possibilities here. I went with the Fire Trap. I kind of like that. It fits the theme fairly well. But yeah, that is what I would consider the third best build for the relaunch of Settlers. Let's quickly talk about the honorable mentions. So let's start with the Hex Blast. The Hex Blast is phenomenal. It's an incredibly good build. It still performs at a very high level. I do have a Hex Blast build, and I do definitely like it. It's a little bit more glassy than the CILS Trickster, I feel like. But that being said, it's enormously good at killing bosses. It's just incredibly good at scaling damage. So for that reason, I put that as an honorable mention. It's a really, really nice build, and I would highly suggest trying it out if you haven't tried it. Then we have the LA or Lightning Arrow build from the past league. I think that this is still very high performing, and with the Necropolis, with the Settlers update that implements the Necropolis alt flames, basically, I'm thinking we're gonna be doing a lot of maps, and if you want to have a mapper that's just insanely fast, and it's gonna clear basically everything on screen and most of the things off of screen you can't see within a certain radius around you, Lightning Arrow is the way to go. It is, however, exceptionally glassy, so if you do run into certain enemies who are gonna splat on the ground immediately, I would definitely not do that in hardcore. Honestly, if I was going hardcore, I would go for one of the top 3 here. But these two are phenomenal builds, great builds, super fast, and it's Lightning Arrow is just, for mapping, it's like in itself, it's probably one of the best builds. And the last one would be Spectral Shield Throw, is something that I've been looking into and I've been thinking about making. There is a couple of very good variants out there, and from what I've been able to deduct from what I've seen and the POBs I've been looking through, and the build guides I've been looking through, this seems like a very, very good build. It's super tanky, it's high damage, it's kind of like the RF in a way, because it kind of like blows up whole just piles of enemies. But yeah, it's a very, very solid build, and you shouldn't have too much issue if you go for this. So I'm not going to leave any POBs or anything for these 3. It's just going to be for these up here. But there is plenty of guides and other stuff out there for using or for building these 3. I even have a video for the Lightning Arrow in case you are interested. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this video. I appreciate everybody coming by. Please leave a like, sub, and all the good jazz. And I'll catch you later tonight when this goes live, hopefully. So yeah, have a good one and catch you in the next one.